My name is Claire Mitchell, and I'm 32 years old. Right now, I'm sitting in a lawyer's office, signing papers that make me the legal owner of my parents' mortgage. The exact amount is $473,000. My sister Bethany has called me 12 times in the past hour. I haven't answered. My parents don't know yet that I'm the one who bought their loan. It started 15 years ago when I asked for $5,000 for college. They said no. They said I needed to learn responsibility. 3 months later, they handed Bethany $90,000 in cash. Before we dive into this story, drop a comment and let me know where you're watching from. If you've ever felt overlooked by your own family, hit that like button because you're going to want to hear how this ends. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss what happens when the people who denied you everything suddenly need you to save them. Trust me, the next part will show you exactly where this all began. I was 17 when everything changed. High school valedictorian, president of 3 clubs, volunteer tutor on weekends. I had worked my entire adolescence toward one goal, getting into a good college and making something of myself. When the acceptance letter from University of Oregon arrived, I screamed so loud our neighbors came over to check if everything was okay. The scholarship covered 60% of tuition, which was incredible, but I still needed $5,000 for the remaining costs, books, and housing deposit. $5,000. That was the number that would determine my entire future. I remember the family dinner where I asked. It was a Wednesday evening in March. Our dining room had this awful floral wallpaper my mother refused to change, and the table was set with the nice plates, which should have been my first warning sign. I had prepared a speech. I had printed out my acceptance letter, my scholarship details, a breakdown of exactly what the $5,000 would cover, and a proposal for how I could pay them back after graduation. My hands were shaking as I laid everything out in front of my father. Richard Mitchell sat at the head of the table like he always did, reading the papers with this expression I couldn't quite read. My mother Linda watched him, waiting for his verdict like she always did. I held my breath. No, he said simply, pushing the papers back across the table. Absolutely not. I felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. But Dad, I have it all planned out. I can pay you back in 4 years, with interest if you want. This scholarship is incredible. I just need help with this last part. He cut his steak, not even looking at me. You're smart enough to figure it out. Get a job, take out loans. Learn what money actually means and how hard it is to earn. My mother nodded along, dabbing her mouth with her napkin. Your father and I worked for everything we have, Claire. Nobody handed us anything. You should learn the same lesson. It builds character. I sat there feeling my dreams crumbling. Bethany, who was 14 at the time, smirked from across the table. She had always been the favorite. Even then, I knew it. But I swallowed my devastation and made a decision right there. I would do it myself. I would show them I didn't need their help. The next day, I applied to every job I could find. By the time summer ended, I was working 3 positions simultaneously. Monday through Friday, I worked the morning shift at the campus library, 4 hours cataloging books and helping students. Friday and Saturday nights, I waitressed at a diner 15 blocks from campus, often not getting home until 2 in the morning. Sunday through Thursday nights, I cleaned office buildings from 10 p.m. until 2 a.m., scrubbing toilets and vacuuming cubicles while everyone else slept. I survived on 4 hours of sleep per night for 4 years. My diet consisted primarily of ramen noodles, day-old bagels from the coffee shop dumpster, and whatever meals I could sneak during my waitressing shifts. I wore thrift store clothes that never quite fit right, and my roommates complained that I was never around to hang out. I didn't tell them I was too exhausted to socialize. Meanwhile, back home, Bethany celebrated her 16th birthday with a brand new SUV. $35,000. I later found out. I saw the photos on social media. My sister posing next to a gleaming silver vehicle with a giant red bow on top. My parents beaming proudly on either side of her. I was eating 50-cent ramen in my dorm room when I saw those pictures. The resentment that built in my chest that night never really went away. I graduated with honors 4 years later, double major in business and computer science. I had a 4.0 grade point average and $42,000 in student debt. My parents came to graduation, took photos, told everyone how proud they were. I smiled for the camera and said nothing about the fact that $5,000 from them could have prevented half that debt. I said nothing about the 3 jobs, the sleepless nights, the meals I skipped to make rent. I graduated, I survived, and I thought maybe now things would be different. I thought maybe they would see that I had done exactly what they asked. I learned responsibility. I worked for everything. I earned it all myself. I had no idea the real betrayal was only 3 months away. I was 22 years old, 3 months out of college, working an entry-level position at a tech company in Portland. The job paid $38,000 a year, which sounds decent until you factor in taxes, student loan payments, and the cost of living in the city. My apartment was a 400-square-foot studio in a building where the heating broke every winter and the hot water was temperamental at best. I owned a futon that doubled as my couch and bed, a folding table that served as my desk and dining area, and exactly 3 plates. I was eating cereal for dinner most nights, but I was proud because it was mine. Every single thing I had, I earned. Then came the family dinner that changed everything. My mother called on a Tuesday and insisted I come home that weekend for a special announcement. Something in her voice made my stomach clench, but I agreed. I drove my 12-year-old Honda Civic back to my childhood home, that same house with the floral wallpaper and the table with the nice plates. Bethany was there, which was unusual since she was supposedly busy with her life. She was 19 now, had dropped out of community college after 1 semester, and was living at home doing nothing as far as I could tell. But she was smiling that day, practically vibrating with excitement. My father stood up during dessert and cleared his throat like he was about to make a toast. "We have wonderful news," he announced. "Bethany has come to us with a brilliant business idea. She wants to open a boutique clothing store downtown." My sister beamed, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "It's going to be so amazing. Designer consignment, trendy pieces, a real Instagram aesthetic. I've always known I was meant to be an entrepreneur." I felt something cold settle in my chest. "That sounds interesting," I managed, my voice careful. "How are you planning to fund it?" That's when my mother pulled out the check. I will never forget watching her slide it across the table to Bethany. $90,000. The numbers seemed to swim in front of my eyes. $90,000 in one check, handed over like it was nothing. "We believe in supporting our children's dreams," my father said, smiling at Bethany with such pride it made me want to scream. "This is a solid investment in her future. She's got real entrepreneurial spirit." The room tilted. My hands gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles went white. "Wait," I said, my voice coming out strangled. "I asked you for $5,000 for college. You said no. You told me to take out loans and learn responsibility. I worked 3 jobs. I have $42,000 in debt that could have been prevented with a fraction of this amount, and you're just giving her $90,000. My mother's face tightened. "Claire, that was different. You needed to learn independence. You're so capable, we knew you could handle it. Bethany needs more support. She's not as academically inclined as you. This is her path." I looked at my father, waiting for him to see the hypocrisy. He just shrugged. "Your sister has a real business plan. This is an investment, not a handout." I laughed, but it came out bitter and sharp. "Can I see this business plan?" Bethany rolled her eyes. "God, you're so jealous. Just because you chose the boring route doesn't mean you get to crap on my dreams." My mother handed me 3 pieces of paper stapled together. I read through it in under 2 minutes. The entire thing was less than 500 words, written in a font size that looked like it was meant for kindergartners learning to read. There were spelling errors, the financial projections made no sense, the market research consisted of lots of people like clothes and Instagram is popular. "This is your solid business plan." I looked at my parents in disbelief. This wouldn't pass a high school business class. My father's face reddened. "Your negativity is exactly why we didn't tell you sooner. Can't you just be happy for your sister? I watched Bethany pick up that check, that $90,000 check, and the smile on her face was something between triumph and smugness. She knew exactly what this meant. She had won some competition I didn't even know we were having. I stood up from the table, my chair scraping loud against the floor. Congratulations, Bethany. I hope it works out for you. I walked out of that house and didn't speak to any of them for 6 months. I saw the social media posts when the boutique opened. My parents were there, cutting the ribbon, posing for photos, talking about how proud they were of their entrepreneur daughter. I was eating dinner alone in my broken heating apartment, and I made myself a promise that night. I would build something so successful, so undeniable, that they would regret every single choice they made. I would prove that their investment strategy was the worst mistake of their lives. Some people are motivated by support and encouragement. I was motivated by spite and the burning need to prove them all wrong. Turns out, that's a pretty powerful fuel. I was 23 when I started building my empire from a kitchen table in that terrible apartment. By day, I worked my tech job, doing data analysis and project coordination for 40 hours a week. By night, I became someone else entirely. I taught myself advanced coding through free online courses, spending every evening hunched over my laptop until my eyes burned and my back ached. The idea came from the most ironic place possible, watching my sister's boutique spiral into chaos. She had no inventory system, no real bookkeeping, no way to track what was selling or what was just taking up space. She was drowning in the exact kind of disorganization that proper software could fix. That's when it hit me. Project management software for small creative businesses. Something intuitive enough for someone like Bethany to use, but powerful enough to actually make a difference. I started coding the first version in January of that year. My apartment transformed into something between an office and a disaster zone. I put a whiteboard on my bedroom wall and covered it with flowcharts and feature lists. My kitchen table disappeared under laptops, notebooks, and empty coffee cups. I lived on caffeine and determination, sleeping maybe 4 hours a night, coding until my fingers cramped and my vision blurred. The first year was brutal. I worked 18-hour days every weekend, sacrificing any semblance of a social life. Friends stopped inviting me to things because I always said no. I missed birthdays, weddings, gatherings. My entire existence narrowed down to my day job and my night mission. When I decided to seek investors to scale faster, I sent out proposals to 17 different venture capital firms. I got 17 rejections. They all said basically the same thing. The market was too crowded. I didn't have enough experience. My projections were too optimistic. One investor told me I should find a more experienced male co-founder to give the company credibility. I taped every single rejection letter to my wall. Some people might have seen that as depressing. I saw it as a reminder of everyone I was going to prove wrong. Money got so tight I sold my bed frame and went back to sleeping on a mattress on the floor. I sold my TV, my bookshelf, everything that wasn't absolutely essential. I ate rice and beans for weeks at a time because it was cheapest. Every spare dollar went into server costs and software licenses. Meanwhile, I watched from a distance as Bethany's boutique struggled. My parents gave her another $20,000 6 months after the initial investment, just to help with inventory. I heard through mutual acquaintances. I felt that familiar burn of anger mixed with vindication. $110,000 they had given her. My entire college education would have cost less than $40,000. Then something shifted. I landed my first client through a cold email campaign. A small design agency needed exactly what I was building. They paid me $200 a month for a subscription. It doesn't sound like much, but I literally cried when that first payment cleared. It meant someone believed in what I was creating. It meant this wasn't just a fantasy fueled by spite. Within 3 months, I had 10 clients. Within 6 months, 50. By the time I turned 25, I had 200 clients, and I had to make a choice: keep the day job for security, or jump into my company full-time and risk everything. I quit my day job on a Monday morning. My boss tried to convince me to stay, offering a raise, more flexibility. I thanked him and walked out. That afternoon, I hired my first employee, a developer named Marcus I met at a coding meetup. We worked out of coffee shops, taking turns buying drinks so we wouldn't get kicked out for camping at tables too long. We worked 10-hour days in those coffee shops, our laptops surrounded by empty cups, building something neither of us was sure would actually work, but it did work. God, it worked better than I dreamed. By 26, my company was generating $500,000 in annual revenue. I moved us out of coffee shops and into a real office. 3 rooms in a converted warehouse with exposed brick and terrible heating, but it was ours. I still hadn't spoken to my family in years. I saw their lives through the careful distance of social media, watching my parents post about Bethany's various attempts to revive the failing boutique, watching my sister's increasingly desperate promotional posts. I felt nothing but a cold satisfaction. Every client I signed, every dollar I earned, every employee I hired, it was all mine. Nobody handed me anything. Nobody gave me a head start. I built it from absolute zero, from spite and student debt and sleeping on floors. The exhaustion was real. The sacrifice was real. But so was the satisfaction. Every single dollar in my bank account represented a choice, a late night, a risk I took. It was the purest form of success I could imagine, and I was just getting started. I was 27 when the message appeared in my inbox. It was a Tuesday morning, and I was reviewing quarterly reports when I saw the notification. Facebook message from Bethany Mitchell. We hadn't spoken in years. No birthday wishes, no holiday greetings, nothing. Complete silence. And now suddenly, here was a message. My finger hovered over it for a full minute before I clicked. Hey sis, it started, casual like we talked every day. Heard your little computer thing is doing okay. That's really cool. Listen, I wanted to reach out because family should support family, you know? The boutique has been going through some rough patches because of the economy and stuff, but I have this amazing plan to turn it around. I just need about $50,000 to rebrand and update inventory. Since you're doing so well with your tech stuff, I thought maybe you'd want to invest. It would be good for both of us. You'd be supporting a family business and showing mom and dad that you still care about us. They worry about you, you know. You've become kind of cold. I read it 3 times, each time feeling a different emotion. First disbelief, then anger, then something close to amazement at the sheer audacity. 5 years of silence, and this was how she chose to reconnect. Not an apology, not an acknowledgement of anything that happened, just a handout asking for money. $50,000 like it was nothing, like I hadn't built every cent through blood and sweat and sacrifice. My company was generating $2 million in annual revenue at that point. We had an office with 20 employees. I had worked 70-hour weeks for years to get there. And she thought she could send a casual Facebook message and I'd just hand over $50,000. I crafted my response carefully, professional, firm, leaving no room for negotiation. Bethany, I appreciate you reaching out, but I won't be investing in your boutique. I built my company without family help because I had to. Your business needs to stand on its own merit. I wish you the best. I hit send and sat back, waiting. The response came within minutes. Are you serious right now? After everything mom and dad did for you? You're really going to be this selfish? We're family? This is what family does. They help each other. I typed back, what exactly did mom and dad do for me? Please, be specific. The next message was longer, angrier. They raised you. They put a roof over your head, fed you. And this is how you repay them? By abandoning your sister when she needs help? You know what? Don't bother responding. Don't contact us again until you learn what family actually means. You've changed, Claire, and not in a good way. Money made you cruel. Then she blocked me. Just like that. I stared at the screen showing the blocked message notification, and I felt this wave of relief mixed with old, familiar pain. My coworker, Roslyn, came into my office, right at that moment, took one look at my face, and closed the door. What happened? I showed her the messages. Rosalind had become my closest friend over the past year, one of my first hires who turned out to be not just brilliant at marketing but also one of the most genuine people I'd ever met. She read through everything twice, her expression getting darker. "Please tell me you're not actually considering this." I laughed, but it came out shaky. "God, no. I'm just amazed that after years of nothing, this is what brings her around. Not curiosity about my life, not actual reconciliation, just money." Rosalind handed back my phone. "You don't owe them anything. Not a dollar, not an explanation, nothing. They made their choices, you made yours. You chose to actually work for what you have." She was right, I knew she was right, but it still hurt. Some part of me, some small, stupid part, had hoped that maybe one day my family would reach out because they were actually proud of me, because they wanted to know me, not because they wanted something from me. That hope died that Tuesday morning. I made another decision right then. My success would be my response. Every milestone, every achievement, every dollar earned would be proof that their investment strategy was garbage, and their favoritism cost them a relationship with someone who would have given anything for their approval once upon a time. The company hit $4 million in revenue that year. We expanded to a second office. I hired 10 more employees. I poured every ounce of energy into building something they couldn't ignore, couldn't diminish, couldn't claim any credit for. Success might not heal old wounds, but it sure makes them easier to ignore. Between ages 28 and 30, everything exploded. A major tech publication featured me in their 30 Under 30 Rising Stars issue, with a full-page spread about building a company from nothing. The article went viral in business circles. Suddenly, investors who had rejected me years earlier were calling, wanting meetings, offering money I no longer needed. The company's revenue climbed from $4 million to $10 million, then to $25 million annually. We moved into a massive headquarters in downtown Portland, 12,000 square feet of modern office space with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the river. I hired aggressively, building a team of 85 people who believed in what we were creating. My personal life changed too. I bought a house, nothing extravagant, but it was mine and I paid cash. $400,000, handed over without a mortgage, without debt, without owing anyone anything. That feeling of complete ownership was sweeter than any luxury could have been. I furnished it slowly, carefully, choosing every piece myself. No hand-me-downs, no compromises. Every morning I woke up in that house. I remembered sleeping on a mattress on the floor and eating ramen in that broken apartment. The contrast made me appreciate every single thing I had built. Through mutual acquaintances and the occasional social media glimpse, I knew things weren't going well for my sister. The boutique finally closed after 5 years of struggling. 5 years of my parents throwing good money after bad, trying to prop up a business that never had a real foundation. I heard through the grapevine that the total family investment in Bethany's failure was $130,000. $130,000 gone, evaporated into bad inventory decisions and lack of business sense. Meanwhile, Bethany moved back home at age 26, living in her childhood bedroom like she was still in high school. My parents' situation was deteriorating too. Richard had taken early retirement at 62, which I later learned was more of a forced resignation disguised as retirement. Linda's part-time income from her administrative job wasn't nearly enough to maintain their lifestyle. The house they bought 30 years ago still had a mortgage because they had refinanced multiple times, pulling out equity to fund Bethany's ventures and their own spending. They were in their mid-60s, facing financial insecurity, and probably realizing their investment strategy had been catastrophic. Some part of me felt satisfaction at that. A larger part just felt tired. Then the email arrived. Subject line, regarding family matters. The sender was Richard Mitchell, my father, who hadn't directly communicated with me in over 5 years. I stared at that email in my inbox for an entire day before opening it. When I finally did, the tone was exactly what I expected. Cold, formal, completely devoid of any real emotion or acknowledgement. "Claire, we understand from various sources that you've done quite well for yourself with your technology company. We're very proud of what you've accomplished. Your mother and I would like to reconnect and perhaps discuss how we might all move forward as a family. Would you be available for lunch next month? Not a single word of apology. No acknowledgement of anything that had happened. No recognition of how they had treated me versus how they had treated Bethany. Just a sterile invitation to lunch wrapped in barely disguised desperation. My first instinct was to delete it. My second instinct was to write back a detailed list of every way they had failed me. But curiosity won. I wanted to see this for myself. I wanted to watch them try to pretend the past didn't exist, so I replied with a single line. "Am available the third Tuesday of next month. Let me know the location." The response came within an hour with the name of an expensive steakhouse downtown. I noticed they picked one of the priciest restaurants in the city. Even in this, they couldn't help themselves. I confirmed the reservation and marked my calendar. I had no illusions about what this lunch would really be about. They were struggling financially. I was doing well. And suddenly they wanted to reconnect. The math wasn't complicated. What they didn't know was that I wasn't the same person who left that dinner table at 22. I had been forged in years of struggle they never witnessed, built calluses they couldn't imagine, and developed a spine made of steel and spite. This lunch was going to be very interesting. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place my parents would choose. Dark wood paneling, leather booths, servers in white jackets, and entrees that started at $60. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a tailored navy suit that cost more than my first car, and driving a Tesla I had bought with cash 6 months earlier. I was 31 years old, and I looked like success. That was intentional. My father's face when I walked in was almost worth the 5 years of silence. He stood up from the booth, and I could see him taking in the suit, the watch, the confidence I carried like armor. My mother's eyes got wide, but the real surprise was seeing Bethany there too, slouched in the booth with her arms crossed and an expression that could curdle milk. Nobody had mentioned she would be here. "Strike one, Claire," my father said, extending his hand like we were business associates. I shook it briefly and slid into the booth across from them. Richard, Linda, Bethany. Using their first names felt powerful. A small distance I placed between us. My mother flinched at it. "Good." The server came by and I ordered water and the salmon. My parents ordered expensive steaks. Bethany ordered the most expensive item on the menu, lobster tail with extra sides. I noted all of it. The small talk was excruciating. My father asked surface questions about my company, not really listening to the answers. My mother asked if I was dating anyone, if I was eating enough, if I was happy. Bethany said nothing, just glared at her phone. 20 minutes of painful pleasantries before my father finally cleared his throat in that way. I remembered from childhood. The sound that meant something important was coming. "So, Claire, the reason we wanted to meet today is to discuss a family matter. An opportunity, really, for us all to come together. Here it comes." I set down my fork and gave him my full attention. He shifted in his seat, uncomfortable under my steady gaze. "Your mother and I find ourselves in a bit of a financial situation. Through some unfortunate circumstances and bad advice from our financial advisor, we've ended up with a mortgage that's become difficult to manage. We're facing some challenges, and we thought perhaps this would be an opportunity for you to invest in the family legacy. We need approximately $250,000 to settle the mortgage situation." I took a sip of water, said nothing. My father continued, "The house will eventually be yours and Bethany's anyway. This would just be accelerating that transfer and helping us avoid a very difficult situation." My mother jumped in, tears already forming. "We gave you life, Claire. We raised you, fed you, clothed you, sacrificed so much for you. Doesn't that count for something? Doesn't family mean anything to you?" Then Bethany spoke for the first time. "And I need $50,000 to start a new business. Online retail this time, much better model. The boutique failed because of bad location and timing, but this will definitely work. So really, we need $300,000 total." I let the silence stretch out, watched them squirm. Finally, I smiled, but it wasn't friendly. Let me make sure I understand. You need $250,000 to cover a mortgage you mismanaged. Bethany needs $50,000 for another business venture after the first one lost over $130,000 of your money. And you're framing this as me investing in family legacy. My father's face reddened. We're not asking for charity. This is family. This is what family does. That's when something inside me snapped. You want to talk about what family does? Let's talk about it. I asked you for $5,000 for college. $5,000. You said no. You told me to learn responsibility. So, I worked 3 jobs. I slept 4 hours a night for 4 years. I graduated with $42,000 in student debt that could have been eliminated with less than the cost of Bethany's 16th birthday car. My mother tried to interrupt, but I kept going. 3 months after you told me to learn the value of money, you handed Bethany $90,000 in cash for a business plan that was 3 pages long with spelling errors. You gave her another $20,000 when it started failing. You bought her a $35,000 car. You funded 5 years of failure while I built a $47 million company from nothing but spite and student loans. Now you sit here in a restaurant you can't afford, eating food you can't pay for, asking me for $300,000 and calling it family legacy? The audacity is actually impressive. My father's face went from red to purple. How dare you? After everything we sacrificed for you. I laughed, but it was cold. What did you sacrifice? Name one thing. One single thing you sacrificed for me specifically. Bethany exploded. You're just jealous because Mom and Dad always loved me more. You can't stand that I was the favorite, so now you're being cruel. I turned to her slowly. You think I'm jealous? Bethany, I offered you a job at my company 3 years ago. A real job with a real salary. You laughed in my face and said you'd never work for your nerd sister. I offered you free business consulting 2 years ago. You blocked my number. I don't want what you have. I pity you. My mother was sobbing now. Your grandfather would be so ashamed of you. That's when I dropped the bomb I had been saving. Speaking of grandfather, let's talk about the $10,000 he left me when I was 19. You told me he left me nothing. I found out 5 years later when I was helping settle some of his estate paperwork that he specifically left me $10,000. Where did that money go? The silence was deafening. My mother went pale. My father wouldn't meet my eyes. Finally, Linda whispered, Bethany needed a deposit for the boutique location. We were going to pay you back. I stood up, pulled out my wallet, and placed $300 bills on the table. That covers my meal and the tip. You 3 are on your own for yours. You have options for your mortgage situation. You can sell the house and downsize. You can set up a payment plan with the bank. Or Bethany can get a job and actually contribute to the household finances. The same way I worked 3 jobs while she got a new car. I grabbed my bag and started to walk away. My father's voice stopped me. Your grandfather would be ashamed. I turned back one last time. No, Richard, he would be ashamed of you. He left me that money specifically because he knew I'd work hard and make something of myself. You stole it to enable Bethany's delusions. You made your choices. Now live with them. I walked out of that restaurant and didn't look back. Behind me, I could hear Bethany screaming something about how I destroyed the family. I kept walking. They destroyed themselves. I just refused to go down with them. 3 months after that disastrous lunch, I was in my office reviewing contracts when Rosalind knocked on my door with an expression I couldn't quite read. You need to see this, she said, handing me her phone. On the screen was a public foreclosure notice. My parents' house, the address I grew up at, was officially in foreclosure proceedings. The mortgage holder was listed as Pacific Northwest Bank, and the amount due was substantial. $473,000 remaining on a house they had bought 30 years ago. They had refinanced so many times, pulled out so much equity to fund Bethany's failures, that they owed nearly as much as the house was worth. I stared at that notice for a long time. Rosalind sat down across from me. "Are you okay?" she asked. I didn't know how to answer. Some part of me felt vindication. They had made terrible financial decisions for years, prioritizing image and Bethany's whims over actual stability. This was the natural consequence. But another part, a smaller part I wasn't proud of, wondered what grandfather would have wanted. Then I remembered they stole my inheritance from him, and that small part went quiet. An idea started forming. It was probably a terrible idea. It was definitely emotionally complicated. But it was also legally sound and strategically interesting. "Roslyn, do you know if banks sell these distressed mortgages?" She looked at me confused. "Usually to investment companies or private investors." "Yeah. Why?" I pulled up my computer and started researching. Within an hour, I had confirmed that Pacific Northwest Bank was indeed selling off their troubled loans to minimize risk. Within 3 hours, I had my lawyer Greg on the phone. "Greg, hypothetically, if I wanted to purchase a specific mortgage from a bank, what would that process look like?" There was a pause. "Claire, whose mortgage are we talking about?" I told him. There was a longer pause. "That's legally permissible, but are you sure this is a good idea?" "This is your parents." I leaned back in my chair. "They made their choices, Greg. Every single financial decision that led them here was theirs. I'm not doing anything illegal or unethical. I'm simply offering to purchase a distressed asset from a bank that wants to offload it." He sighed. "All right, let me make some calls." 2 days later, Greg called back with details. The bank was eager to sell. My parents had been difficult borrowers, constantly calling to complain or request extensions. The property value was assessed at $520,000, but the loan amount was $473,000. They were underwater by the amount they had pulled out for Bethany's boutique, roughly $50,000. The bank would accept a cash offer for the full loan amount if I could close quickly. I sat with that information for a week. I talked to exactly 2 people about it, Roslyn and Greg. Roslyn asked me what I hoped to accomplish. "I don't know," I admitted. "Maybe I just want them to know what it feels like to need help from someone who doesn't owe them anything. Maybe I want them to face the reality of their choices. Maybe I'm still that angry kid working 3 jobs while my sister got everything." Greg asked me if I was prepared for the emotional fallout. "They disowned me first." I said, "I'm just deciding what comes next." I made the offer. Pacific Northwest Bank accepted immediately. $473,000, wire transfer, 30-day close. The paperwork was straightforward. I was purchasing the debt, not the house. My parents would still own the property, but now they owed me instead of the bank. Same terms, same payment schedule, same consequences for default. It was entirely legal, entirely clean, and entirely unexpected. The transaction closed 3 weeks later. I became the legal holder of my parents' mortgage on a Tuesday afternoon in October. My 32nd birthday was the following week. I didn't tell them immediately. The first notice they'd receive would be in about 60 days, informing them of the mortgage transfer to a new holder. That's when they'd see my name. Part of me knew this was extreme. Part of me knew this would nuke whatever remained of our relationship. But the larger part of me, the part that had survived on spite and determination, wanted them to understand something fundamental. Actions have consequences, and the daughter they dismissed had become someone they should have respected. Meanwhile, Bethany's social media showed her posting bitter messages about toxic family members and how success doesn't equal character. Friends sent me screenshots. She was clearly talking about me, painting herself as the victim of a cruel sister who had abandoned her family in their time of need. She conveniently left out the $90,000, the $35,000 car, the additional $20,000 bailout, and every other advantage she had been handed. I didn't respond publicly. I didn't need to. Anyone who actually knew the situation knew the truth. Everyone else didn't matter. I looked at the mortgage papers on my desk. $473,000. It was less than 1% of my company's current valuation. I could forgive it tomorrow and barely notice the financial impact. But this wasn't about money. It had never been about money. This was about acknowledgement, consequences, and the fact that the daughter they threw away had grown into someone who didn't need them anymore. They were about to learn that lesson the hard way. 90 days after I purchased the mortgage, I sent the formal notice through my lawyer. The letter was professional, standardized, exactly what any borrower would receive when their loan was sold. It informed them that Pacific Northwest Bank had transferred their mortgage to a new holder, that all future payments should be directed to the new account, and that the terms remained unchanged. At the bottom, in standard legal format, was the name of the new mortgage holder, Claire Mitchell Capital Holdings, LLC. The phone calls started within an hour of them receiving that letter. 12 calls from my mother, 8 from my father, 23 from Bethany. I answered none of them. Then came the voicemails, ranging from confused to angry to desperate. My father's voice was cold fury. "This is vindictive and you know it. Call me back immediately." My mother's was sobbing. "How could you do this to us? We're your parents." Bethany's was pure venom. "You're trying to steal their home. I always knew you were evil." Their lawyer contacted my lawyer within 2 days. The message was predictable. This was a conflict of interest, potentially elder abuse, definitely motivated by revenge. Greg's response was beautifully simple. "Miss Mitchell purchased a distressed asset from a bank through standard commercial channels. She is offering the same terms the bank offered. If your clients have concerns about their ability to meet the mortgage obligations, they should discuss payment options or consider selling the property. This is a standard debtor-creditor relationship." I agreed to one meeting. My lawyer's conference room, neutral ground, everyone with legal representation. I arrived 15 minutes early, wearing another tailored suit, carrying a leather portfolio. I was calm. I was prepared. I was done being the daughter who begged for scraps. When my parents walked in with their lawyer and Bethany trailing behind, the contrast was stark. They looked older than I remembered, tired, beaten down by circumstances they had created. We sat across the table from each other. Their lawyer, a middle-aged man named Patterson who looked like he wished he was anywhere else, started with the predictable arguments. "Miss Mitchell, surely you can see how this appears. Purchasing your parents' mortgage, especially given the family history, seems designed to cause harm." I smiled politely. "Mr. Patterson, I purchased a distressed asset from a willing seller. Pacific Northwest Bank was eager to offload a problematic loan. I offered market rate for the debt. There's nothing unusual or illegal about this transaction," my father exploded. "You're trying to steal our home! After everything we gave you." I turned to him slowly. "What exactly did you give me, Richard? Please be specific." My mother tried to intercede. "Claire, honey, what happened to the sweet girl we raised? Money has changed you." I pulled out my laptop and opened a spreadsheet I had prepared. "Let's talk about money, Linda. Let's talk about what you gave me versus what you gave Bethany." I turned the screen so everyone could see. Bethany's 16th birthday car, $35,000. Initial boutique investment, $90,000. Additional boutique bailout, $20,000. My inheritance from grandfather that you gave to Bethany, $10,000. Total family investment in Bethany, $155,000. Total family investment in me, $0. In fact, less than zero, since you stole my inheritance. I clicked to the next slide. My college tuition, had you helped with the $5,000 I asked for, would have prevented approximately $20,000 in high-interest student loan debt. Total 4-year cost, $38,000. You had the money. You chose not to help me while simultaneously buying Bethany a car that cost almost as much. Patterson cleared his throat. "Miss Mitchell, while this history is unfortunate, it doesn't change the current situation." I nodded. "You're right. So let's discuss the current situation. Your clients owe $473,000. The property is worth approximately $520,000. They have 3 options. I counted them off on my fingers. 1. Continue making payments as agreed. I'm offering the exact same terms the bank offered. Same interest rate, same payment schedule. 2. Sell the house, pay off the mortgage, keep the difference. They'd walk away with approximately $40,000 after selling costs. 3. We work out a modified payment plan if they can demonstrate genuine financial hardship. My father's face was red. You can't do this. I raised an eyebrow. I absolutely can. This is a legal debt, properly acquired. You're the borrowers, I'm the lender. That's how mortgages work. Bethany, who had been silent until now, suddenly screamed, I hate you! You destroyed this family. Everything was fine until you decided to be petty. I turned to her, and my voice was ice. Everything was fine? Bethany, I offered you a job 3 years ago at a starting salary of $60,000. You laughed at me. I offered you business consulting 2 years ago when I could see your boutique was failing. You blocked my number. I tried to help. You refused. My mother was crying. We're your parents. Doesn't that mean anything? I felt something crack in my chest, but I kept my voice steady. It meant everything. That's why it hurt so much when you chose her over me again and again. When you handed her $90,000 3 months after telling me to take out loans. When you stole my inheritance to fund her failing business. When you showed up after 5 years of silence just to ask for $300,000. My father tried one last manipulation. Your grandfather would be ashamed of you. That's when I dropped the final truth bomb. Let's talk about grandfather. I found some interesting information while settling his estate records. He didn't just leave me $10,000. He left me a letter, too, with his lawyer. I got it 5 years ago. Want to know what it said? The room went silent. He wrote that he was leaving me money specifically because he knew I'd have to work harder than Bethany. He saw the favoritism. He saw how you treated me differently. He wrote, and I quote, Claire will need this more because Richard and Linda are blind to their own prejudice. They will give Bethany everything and expect Claire to be grateful for nothing. I pray they see their mistake before it's too late. My mother went pale. My father stared at the table. Bethany looked confused, like she couldn't process what this meant. So yes, I continued, grandfather would be ashamed. But not of me. You stole money he specifically left me, because he knew you'd fail me. And you used it to enable Bethany's business failure. You proved him right about everything. Greg cleared his throat. My client has presented 3 options. You have 60 days to make a decision. If you choose to sell, well, cooperate fully with a reasonable timeline. If you choose to continue payments, the first payment under the new terms is due in 30 days. If you need a modified payment plan, provide financial documentation and we'll review it. Patterson nodded stiffly. We'll be in touch. As they stood to leave, Bethany turned back one last time. I hate you. You destroyed everything. I met her eyes. No, Bethany. I just stopped protecting you from the consequences of your choices. There's a difference. I watched them file out of the conference room. My father's shoulders were slumped. My mother was still crying. Bethany was texting furiously, probably already posting some version of events to social media. I sat in the empty conference room for a long time after they left. Greg put a hand on my shoulder. You okay? I nodded slowly. I think I am. For the first time in a long time, I think I actually am. 2 months later, I got the call from Greg. My parents had made their decision. They were selling the house. A young family had made an offer of $530,000, slightly over asking. After paying off the mortgage I held and covering selling costs and realtor fees, they would walk away with approximately $40,000. They were moving to a 2-bedroom condo on the other side of town, a rental at $1,500 a month. Downsizing, finally facing the reality of their financial situation. The closing happened on a Thursday. I didn't attend. Greg handled everything through the title company. The wire transfer hit my account by end of business, $473,000 plus 3 months of interest. I looked at that number in my account and felt nothing. The money meant nothing. It had never been about the money. 1 week after the sale closed, A letter arrived at my office. Hand-addressed envelope, my mother's handwriting. I almost threw it away without opening it. But something made me sit down at my desk, take a breath, and carefully open the envelope. 3 pages, handwritten, my mother's careful script covering both sides of each page. It wasn't exactly an apology, but it was the closest thing I was likely to get. Claire, we've had a lot of time to think these past few months. Your father and I realize now that we made mistakes. We see how we treated you differently than Bethany. At the time, we told ourselves we were being harder on you because you were so capable. You were smart, driven, organized. You didn't need help the way Bethany did. But we see now that wasn't fair. Everyone needs support. Everyone deserves to know their parents believe in them. She wrote about the favoritism, acknowledging it in careful terms. We gave Bethany more help because we worried about her more. She struggled in school, struggled to find direction. You always seemed to know exactly what you wanted. We thought we were helping her find her way. We didn't see that we were teaching you that your achievements didn't matter to us, that your struggles were less important. There was a paragraph about the inheritance. Taking your grandfather's money was wrong. We planned to pay you back, but money was always tight, and then it became easier to pretend it never happened. Your grandfather knew us better than we knew ourselves. He saw our blind spots. We should have listened. The letter went on. We're not asking for forgiveness or money or anything at all. We just wanted you to know that we finally see what we did. Losing the house hurt, but it also opened our eyes. We've been living beyond our means for years, trying to maintain an image that was never real. The house was too big for 2 people anyway. We should have downsized years ago. She wrote about Bethany too. Your sister is working at a retail store now. It's her first real job, and it's been an adjustment. She's learning things she should have learned 10 years ago. We enabled her too much. We see that now. I read that letter 5 times. Each time, I felt different emotions. Anger that it took losing their house to make them see. Sadness that we had wasted so much time. A tiny, cautious hope that maybe something could be salvaged. But, mostly, I felt tired. Tired of carrying the anger. Tired of the vindication. Tired of proving myself to people who should have believed in me from the start. I started therapy 6 months before all this happened. My therapist had helped me understand that their failures didn't define me, that I could acknowledge the hurt while still building a life that wasn't centered on proving them wrong. The business continued to thrive. The acquisition deal we had been negotiating finally closed, valuing the company at $63 million. We were approached by larger tech companies interested in either partnership or acquisition. I had more opportunities than I could pursue, more success than I had dreamed possible in those days of eating ramen in my broken apartment. My team had grown to over 100 employees. We had opened offices in 3 cities. The project management software I built out of spite and student debt had helped over 10,000 small businesses operate more efficiently. My personal life had stabilized too. I was dating Nathan, a software engineer I met at a conference who loved my ambition instead of being threatened by it. We took rock climbing lessons together on weekends and cooked elaborate meals on Tuesday nights. Roslyn and I were still close, now both as friends and as business partners. I had bought a building downtown and converted the top floor into a nonprofit, full-ride coding scholarships for young women from low-income families, 50 scholarships a year, covering everything from tuition to housing to textbooks. The help I never got, I was giving to others. My contact with my family remained limited. I responded to my mother's letter with a short note, acknowledging receipt and thanking her for the honesty. Linda and I exchanged occasional emails now, surface-level updates about weather and work. She sent me photos when they moved into the condo. I sent back a polite response saying it looked nice. Bethany never reached out, and I didn't expect her to. I saw through mutual friends that she was still working retail, still living at home, still posting occasionally bitter things on social media. I had blocked all of it. I didn't need that energy in my life. My father and I had no contact. Richard's pride wouldn't allow him to reach out, and I had no interest in forcing a reconciliation that he clearly didn't want. Some relationships are too broken to fix. Some wounds don't heal, they just become part of your landscape, scars you learn to carry. I was okay with that. I had spent years seeking their approval, their acknowledgement, their belief in me. I didn't need it anymore. I had proven to myself what I was capable of. That was enough. Sitting in my office now, looking out over the city, I thought about that 17-year-old girl who asked for $5,000 with shaking hands. I thought about the 22-year-old woman who walked out of a dinner after watching her sister receive $90,000. I thought about every late night, every rejection, every moment I wanted to give up but pushed through anyway. The path had been brutal, but it had made me someone I was proud to be. Someone who didn't need handouts or advantages. Someone who built something real from nothing but determination and spite. They thought saying no would teach me a lesson. It did, just not the one they intended. I learned that the people who should support you might fail you. I learned that you can build a life from rubble and rejection. I learned that success is sweeter when you earn every single piece of it yourself. I learned that family isn't always the people you're born to. Sometimes it's the people who show up when everything is falling apart. I learned that proving yourself to others is exhausting, but proving yourself to yourself is empowering. Last month, I attended the first graduation ceremony for our scholarship program. 50 young women received their diplomas, many of them the first in their families to graduate college. I watched them walk across that stage, and I saw myself at their age, desperate for just a little help, just a small acknowledgement that I was worth investing in. I handed each of them a check for their first year at university. Full ride, housing, books, meal plan, everything they needed to succeed. One girl hugged me so hard I almost fell over. "You gave me a chance nobody else would," she whispered. I hugged her back. "You earned it. This is just the beginning." Walking to my car that night, I thought about my parents in their small condo, probably watching television, probably discussing how to stretch their limited retirement income. I thought about Bethany working retail at 29, finally learning what a real job feels like. I didn't feel vindication or satisfaction or even anger anymore. I just felt separate from them, like they were characters in a story I used to care about. The ending of their story didn't matter to me anymore. I was too busy writing my own. So here's what I want you to take from this. Some families give you wings. Others force you to build them yourself. Either way, you learn to fly. The people who underestimate you don't deserve front row seats to your success. Your worth isn't determined by who invests in you. Sometimes the greatest gift is being forced to prove yourself, because then nobody can ever take credit for what you built. I built a $47 million company from nothing but spite and student loan debt. Turns out, that was worth more than $90,000 ever could have bought, not because of what I built, but because of who I became in the process. The cycle is broken. I became the person I needed when I was 17 and desperate and asking for help that never came. And maybe that's the real lesson. Sometimes being denied what you need forces you to become who you're meant to be. I wouldn't change anything. Every rejection, every betrayal, every moment of being overlooked made me stronger, sharper, more determined. They handed my sister everything and expected me to be grateful for nothing. Instead, I became everything they never imagined I could be, and I did it entirely on my own terms. Now, I want to hear from you. Have you ever been overlooked by your own family? Have you ever had to build something from nothing because nobody believed in you? Drop a comment below and share your story. If this resonated with you, smash that like button so others who need to hear this can find it. Subscribe to this channel for more stories about overcoming family dysfunction and building success on your own terms. Share this with someone who needs to know that being underestimated by your family doesn't define your future. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it inspires you to keep going, even when the people who should support you choose not to. Remember, you don't need their approval to succeed. You just need to believe in yourself enough to keep building, even when nobody else does. Take care of yourselves out there, and never let anyone convince you that you're not worth investing in.